Apparently there were some breaks in the signal. So for those of you who might have missed it, we do have Sindile here. And for the first time for many of us, he has his first kill as seen by WildEarth viewers. And it is a little Dwarf Mongoose. And he does appear to be quite protective of it, which is why I'm not getting too much closer. He doesn't seem too comfortable with too much activity close to him. And I can understand if you've just made one of your first kills, you do feel a little bit possessive over it, I'm sure. But exciting stuff, and he doesn't appear to be eating it at the moment. He's just sort of carrying it around with him as a prize. And I'm sure he is feeling very, very pleased with himself. So for those of you who might have been concerned over Sindile's well-being when his mother leaves him for extended periods of time, as you can see, he's quite capable of being on his own. Copy that. Thank you, James. So I think we're all feeling very, very proud of Sindile. He is doing well, and I'm sure that Dwarf Mongoose are not that easy to catch. They're very, very alert animals and vigils. It's kind preparation is what will keep him alive in the years to come as he gains independence from his mom. He's still a little bit young, as far as I know. He's just under a year old. But in the next year or so, he will start moving further and further from the protection and care of his mother. And now that he has relaxed a little bit, and he is, as we are the only car here, I'm just going to shift the nose of my car just in a little bit. I won't get too much closer. Okay, so do apologize for the fact that the signal broke up for a lot of people at such a crucial time. So what we are going to do is do a little bit of a replay just to show you what you might have missed if the signal was down while you were trying to watch. So we'll sort that out for you now, and we'll show you what was happening. So as we came in, we saw him on the top of the termite mound, and then he picked up that Dwarf Mongoose, great pride, somewhere more comfortable, and he disappeared off the side of the termite mound. So, not too much action from him, but a really exciting moment and a milestone in Sindile's life. And isn't it wonderful that we get to share it with all of you guys on WildEarth? And we have no way of knowing. This is probably not his first kill, but it is the first time that we've seen it. So exciting stuff. And he doesn't seem too interested in eating it. He obviously isn't that hungry, and it was more a kill that would have come about through instinctive responses to moving animals. So let me just see if I can shift a little bit closer without disturbing him. If at any point I feel like he's not happy, I will immediately switch off. And Sindile is very relaxed around cars, but as with all animals, food potentially changes things. So just watch his body language very carefully as we sneak in a little bit. And it's always important to never drive in a straight line directly at an animal to approach it. If you are trying to make your way a little bit closer, it is very important not to drive straight at them so they don't feel like you are deliberately advancing on them. I just want to grab my binoculars and see if I can still see the mongoose. I'm sure that it's still there, just tucked away in the grass at his feet. It is really, truly fascinating to see how these cats develop those instincts. And I think, I can't see, is he licking his paw or is he licking the mongoose? Yeah. He does have the mongoose tucked away between his front legs. And he's just giving it a couple of tentative, exploratory licks. Oh, fly. Oh, and it is such exhausting work catching mongoose. Clearly very tired now. There we go. You can see it a little bit. I think he is going to start potentially tucking into that. Let me just try and move forward a little bit so that we can see there's a inconvenient branch right in our way. He is here we go. He's having a little bit of a nibble. And he is just trying to work out exactly how he wants to go about eating this. And that licking motion is also instinctive with a kill. So he's using a rough part of his tongue to lick across the kill, and it just helps to remove some of that hair. Leopards really don't like eating hair. If they can avoid it, they will, but they try to pluck out and lick away as much as possible before they tuck into their meal. And he keeps looking up into the marula tree. It is pretty high, but I wonder if he is thinking about hoisting his first kill and putting it up into a tree where it's safe from any marauding other animals. It's interesting to see how used to he is to traffic. This is one of the main roads on this reserve. It is a cut line dividing several different properties, and he appears to be very, very comfortable with cars passing through. And indeed, the few times that I have seen him, which is an ever-growing number, but the few times I've seen him, he is usually on or around this cut line. Yum. So, I know that this is a little bit graphic. So, I know that this is a little bit graphic. And with his mom away, he's managed to fend for himself very, very effectively. He just can't quite work out exactly how he wants to eat the mongoose. I think it's a little bit small and a little bit fiddly for him, but he will figure it out. So it will be interesting to see how he goes about eating his current meal. He will pick away at whatever he can, so he'll try and get the best part of the meat off the hindquarters and maybe the shoulders. But it is a very small meal, and the mongoose bones are very tiny, so there's a good chance that he's going to crunch some of those as well and ingest them. He will definitely try and avoid the intestines and the stomach contents. But he hasn't quite figured out his way around how to get in and how to do that and to get the parts of the meat that he actually wants to eat. And that is one kill I definitely would have been interested to see. I'd love to know how he did it. So I didn't get to see how the kill went, and Kevin would like to know if James saw Sindile catch the mongoose. Not as far as I know. I didn't hear any reports of that, so I think it must have happened just before James found him. And I think he's probably been carrying it around for a while, just trying to figure out exactly what to do with it. I would say it is a fresh kill because dwarf mongoose are not nocturnal, so it would have happened sometime this morning. Possibly because it was so cold this morning, the dwarf mongoose might have been out a little bit late from their burrows and might have been trying to warm up in the sun, which has just broken through. And Sindile probably took his opportunity sometime then. Still licking, not really tucking in. And leopards are amazing in this way. They are incredibly versatile creatures, and they are very, very adaptable. So they can make the use of any kind of situation or habitat, and they will utilize whatever kind of food source they can find in terms of prey, which is what makes them so widespread, distributed throughout Africa. And they will utilize whatever kind of food source they can find in terms of prey, which is what makes them so widespread, distributed throughout Africa. And it is and I'm not sure what's going on in his mind. He might just sharpen his claws a little bit. Might also just be an interesting scent on the tree, possibly from another leopard or something, or a lion sharpening its claws. I don't see any claw marks on the tree. And maybe he is just thinking about the realities of the future and how he will put his kills up in trees in order to protect them. And he doesn't seem like he's that keen on really finishing the rest of that mongoose. And it is very important for him to keep clean after a meal.
Hello everyone. Being out in the bush and being out there live has its technical challenges. We're experiencing some of that now and are working on it as fast as possible to get it sorted and get you back on the vehicle with us.
No idea what happened, but Chandra and I did experience quite a strange moment. Electrical cables over our heads did a very strange sort of whipping shockwave effect. Sindile away, although he did look up in a little bit alarmed. So we have no idea exactly what happened, but something was obviously playing up around us. And he's hopped up. You didn't miss anything. He hasn't really changed position. This is the first time he's sat up since we were gone. And I just shifted a little bit just to see if we could get a view of what he was up to. And there's obviously something very itchy there. Those dark marks above his nose. Quite interesting. Those spot patterns just above his nose will be very useful in identifying him in future. He is just going to shift past us. Not sure what he's heard, but he's just stood up to investigate. And obviously the mongoose was not a very appetizing meal, because he's decided to leave that behind. That's still where it was earlier, behind the marula tree in the grass. And he is looking much, much bigger, growing very, very fast now. Isn't it so special how relaxed he is? Totally chose to walk right past in front of the car. And what a special experience that is. And even now, looking at his tracks, considerably bigger than Shadow's now. So already his feet have overtaken her, even if he's maybe still a bit smaller. But when I last saw them together, they were very close in size. So I'm not entirely sure why he has abandoned his mongoose, his prize. It might be that he just doesn't really, it's not worth the trouble of trying to get into. And he doesn't look particularly hungry, although he doesn't look like he's just eaten. But he obviously decided that that mongoose was not what he was interested in at the moment. Clearly not worth the trouble of trying to snack on it. And he's back lying down again. I'm not sure what that was about. I think just a little exploration of the area. I do think that despite the fact that he has abandoned his mongoose for now, I do think that if something like a jackal or anything like that tried to sneak in and try and steal it, he would immediately rush to its defense. It is just an instinctive response from the predators to be very protective over their kills when they can. Obviously, if it was something larger like another leopard or a hyena, then he would have to be a bit more circumspect about that defense strategy and would probably end up having to abandon it. But something smaller to abandon it. But something smaller to cannot believe the temperature change in the last hour or so. Gone from shivering to really enjoying a or have just tuned in. Don't forget that this is a live safari. So we are sitting right now in the Sabi Sands with this little leopard. And if you have any questions about him or anything in general, please feel free to send them through at #SafariLive on Twitter or email through at questions@wildearth.tv. And we are very, very interested in hearing not only your questions but also your opinions. I'd love to know a little bit more about what you are thinking. And that is half the joy of being able to have, in a way, so many people on the back of the vehicle joining us on a live safari. It's also been an interesting lesson to me over the last 10 days or so, having seen Sindile for the first time on Saturday, I think, and a couple of times I've been told whereabouts, the areas that he generally moves around in with shadow. And it's been interesting for me to see how very often from day to day he is very, very close to where we left him, say the night before or the morning before. And he hasn't, in terms of distance, he is probably less than 1 kilometer away from when I first saw him on Saturday. So interesting. I'm learning a lot about their movements. Doesn't quite seem to know what to do with himself. Some alarm calls off to my left, but not serious ones. I think it might be the zebra are just potentially fighting with each other. Hasn't seemed to have attracted too much of his attention. I think he might go back to his mongoose now. Oh, distraction. Nope, changed his mind. You can see his nose hard at work there, reading the different smells of the bush. There's a good chance that one of the other predators has walked past or rubbed in some way on that blade of grass. It does have an interesting smell to it, clearly. Hello, beautiful boy. Amazing how close he is willing to come, all on his own, just showing how perfectly comfortable he is with our presence. Hoping he might demonstrate the phlegm and grimace motion in response to whatever smell he is picking up on this grass. It obviously is something very interesting to him. Possibly the urine spray of another leopard or something along those lines. There we go. Perfect. Thank you, boy. So that face that he pulled and the motion that he's doing with his tongue, touching it to his nose and then pulling it back into his mouth, is to transport that scent to the vomeral nasal organ, also known as the organ of Jacobson. And that is a perfect. And again, that facial expression is known as the phlegm and grimace. And it just opens up the passages into that organ of Jacobson that sits right at the top of their palate and allows them to draw the scent in. And if you can imagine it as he is tasting what he just smelled, that organ is protected. So in order to open it up to be exposed to those scents, he has to pull up his lips like that and scrunch up his nose. And those muscle contractions just open it up to him. So I'm going to duck my head out of the way so you can see him, and I'm sure he's going to make his way back to his mongoose and his shady spot in this tree. Was potentially something interesting there. Just a good spot to pee. And you'll often find, interestingly enough, that after doing a phlegm and grimace, in terms of investigating a scent, the animal might actually be stimulated to urinate as well, or to defecate in response to certain scents. So you do occasionally see it in response to that phlegm and grimace motion. So, as you can see, he is still a little bit possessive over his kill. And despite the fact that he isn't that keen on eating it right now, he doesn't want to be separated for too long from it. And I think he's just going to repeat the process of lying down and maybe nibbling on it for a little bit. But while I reposition and get us a better view, I am going to send you across to Scott, who has some interesting zebra behavior happening on his side. So as I reposition, I will see you guys in not too long a time.
To watch what we're showing you, but I'll basically tell you a little bit about what has happened before we to zebra. Basically, we heard some zebra audio, which is their kind of distress call that they'll let out if they're being chased by other animals or if they are having fights between other members of their herd. And earlier on this morning, we noticed that there were some zebra acting quite boisterously. We weren't sure if it was just the misty weather that was causing them to act a little bit differently. But basically what happened is, and James got to see this, he was in this area and he came in to respond to these vocalizations that he heard. And he saw some zebra coming in, not sure whether it was a mare or a stallion, but basically they attacked this young foal that we're about to show you, and they broke its back right leg. So now it's not going to make it, and it's in a very pitiful state. But it does happen in nature, and interestingly enough, with zebra, it's fairly common for other zebra to kill young foals, whether it was other stallions who are coming in trying to overthrow the current dominant stallion from this herd, and not
did have quite a sad visual of that little zebra with a broken leg, and it is always hard to watch animals that are suffering, but it is nature and it is the way that things go out here, and possibly some food for a hungry predator at some point. So very sad to see, in the same way that it is sad to see this poor little mongoose, but at the same time it is wonderful news for Sindile. It just goes to show that he is starting to become independent. And he is lying down. Genre, are you still with him? Just his ears. So he's tucked himself down in the thicket there. So he is still very possessive over his kill. But I do think we are going to lose sight of him fairly soon as he moves a bit further south. I'll try and stay with him as long as possible. Actually going to move forward a little. No, I'm going to go backwards. Let's try to work out which direction he's going in. So is he. Genre, will you be able to go through that gap as he comes through?
Try.
Just double checking with Genre just because I don't have a monitor, so I can't see what you guys are seeing. is disappearing off. How's it, guys? How are you? Good, thanks. He has disappeared off into the distance. So I'm just saying hi to a couple of the other guides who will be able to follow him and hopefully keep me updated as to whether or not he decides to come back out. And just before we... So, while we double check and see that we really have lost Sindile, I will send you guys back to Scott and I will try and stay with him as long as possible. Unfortunately, I think he is very much determined to move off in that direction. So we might be moving on to different things. But for now, I'll send you back to Scott. I'll see you guys a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. And this is a really difficult scenario for us to be a part of and to witness. So I completely understand if some of you don't want to watch this, and it is. It's pitiful to see. But again, it's important to realize that it is nature, and for us, it's something that none of us have ever experienced in the flesh, either James or myself. It's only something we've heard of. And we are going to stay here to see what happens. It'll be interesting to try and work out what is going on. But there are still quite a few zebra in this area still running around. So we are going to hang around and keep an eye on this situation and try and get to know a little bit better of which zebra may have taken out their anger and frustration on this young foal. Was it a stallion? Was it another mare? Are there possibly two separate herds of zebra that are fighting with one another? Like I said earlier, it could be these dry and harsh times that cause animals to act a little bit differently to times of plenty, and maybe that's what it can be attributed to. I know the video footage that I saw of zebras killing a young foal was in the very dry conditions around a waterhole where water was very scarce and running out. And I guess that footage that I have seen in the past, coupled with the dry season now, is leaning me towards the fact that it is pressure caused by a lack of food and competition. Anyway, the zebra is still here to our right. I can't hear, as I said, that there are still some zebra that I can hear huffing and puffing nearby. We've moved a little bit further away because we certainly don't want to prevent anything happening here. And as sad as this is, the best possible solution would be for the zebra to return and put this foal out of its misery, which they could well do. And they are still hanging around nearby. Well, just to give you a bit of more background into exactly what happened, James was in this area and he actually saw this young foal earlier. It was perfectly okay. And when he returned here, that was when Andrew and I could hear the audio of the zebra ringing out. And we rushed into this area thinking that it was possibly shadow that the zebra had seen and was chasing around. But unfortunately, our excitement was quickly dampened by the sight of this poor young foal. I can still see the other zebra. It'll be very difficult for Andrew to show them to you because we have moved off quite some distance and they are in quite thick vegetation, but they are spread out, and that's making me feel like it could be two separate herds that have converged, or possibly one herd, a stallion with his harem of females, being persecuted by another bachelor herd of stallions. So those are my guesses. And they are still in this general area. Earlier on, James said when he arrived on the scene, this young zebra foal was contact calling, trying to obviously call its mother away from all this chaos and confusion. But now that it's so badly damaged, it has stopped performing that contact call. And maybe in all of the chaos that ensued, the zebra's mother may have lost track of exactly where it was. And like I say, this is obviously tragic scenario to bear witness to. But it does just bear testament to the fact that we don't know what to expect out here on SafariLive, and we've been having such a joyous morning with the mist and the wonderful sightings of Sindile. And for it to end like this it is very sad, but again, it reminds us of how harsh nature can be, and also how some behavior of animals can simply not really be explained. We can't be exactly sure why this has happened. Something that we also must remember in times like this, when we do see animals that are certainly doomed, there's no ways that this young foal will survive. But the death and injury of this foal could make a huge difference to the lives of predators who may be looking for a meal. And we can rest assured that nothing will go to waste here. As sad as this is, it will be much needed and possibly definitely easy meal for any predator that stumbles upon this scene, be it shadow, who could very well come through here, or the clan of hyena that we see. Their den site's only half a mile away from here. So there will be animals that benefit from this tragic scene. All of the adult zebra are still standing off about 50 or 60 meters away, but they're moving up and down and letting off the odd snort. I know we were having a few technical difficulties earlier, so some of you may not be fully in the loop of what has happened here. But basically, some adult zebra, we're not sure if it was stallions or mares, attacked this young foal, and in doing so they broke its back right leg at its knee joints. Crippling this poor foal. And from what I've seen in the past, they can, or at least video footage, I've never ever witnessed this live and in the flesh. But from what I've seen and read is that the zebra can often and will often not only injure young foals, but they'll continue to attack them until they are dead, which, to be honest, would be the best possible solution for this young foal now, to put it out of its misery. There's no ways it can make it back from this injury. And a lot of you may be pleading as to why we are not helping. It's not our role to get involved in this ecosystem. It operates far better without us getting involved. And that is why we strictly spectate the ongoings and try as best as we can to have as little impact on what goes on as possible. Well, I'm sorry to end off such a wonderful morning drive with such a sad sighting, but it has come to a close, and I think we probably will stick around here though and keep an eye on this foal. And if not now, we may come back and just check on things later. Obviously, we're all very interested to know what happens and what will happen. As sad as it is, it still is interesting behavior. Thanks for joining the show. Thanks to Andrew on camera, and Jamie and Jean-Andre say goodbye, and thanks for joining them too. Have a good one. We'll see you on the Sunset Safari.